Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Ari, and today we're going to have some more stories about our toxic life. But before we start, it would be so much appreciated if you would subscribe to my channel, like the video, if you enjoy it, and maybe leave a comment down below. These simple clicks would mean a lot to the future of this channel and really reward the effort that I put in every day. And now without further ado, let's go. Today's first story. In this story, Opie discovers his fiancee's deceitful plan to frame him for cheating and gain alimony. With his best man, he orchestrates a dramatic revelation at their wedding, exposing her infidelity publicly. The groom-to-be and his friend expose the affair, leaving the bride ashamed and abandoned by her family. The incident leaves both the bride and her accomplice regretful and isolated. Now let's get into the story. My fiancée, 26 female, was an extremely spoiled woman. She always had things handed to her, but she never noticed. She just thought it was easy, and things would always work out. A part of me fell for this optimism of hers, because she drew people in like sunshine. It's no wonder people gave her whatever she wanted. She didn't even have to ask. We dated for 2.5 years before I proposed. I met her family a year into our relationship, and we grew close, and I felt like she was meant to be my wife. We started planning our wedding, and it was sure to be a grand event. Her parents spared no expense, agreeing to anything their daughter wanted. One day, she took one of her bridesmaids, named Heather, to order our wedding cake. When she came home, I expected to hear all about it and see pictures of what she decided on. Instead, she seemed off. She said she didn't feel good and needed to lie down. I asked her how it went, but all she said was that they weren't able to pick one out. I was worried about her, but it was just the start of her odd behavior. Over the next 4 weeks, there were several odd occurrences. One night, my fiancée told me she needed to take one of her bridesmaids out to dinner because she was tempted to cheat on her husband. I was surprised but wished her luck, persuading her friend that cheating is never worth it. She didn't get back until I was fast asleep, and all she said the next day was that she did her best to convince her. Another night, she left the apartment while I was in the shower. It was completely unexpected, so I tried calling her, but she didn't answer until the third try. She said she realized we needed kitty litter for the cats. After she hung up on me, I found a full bag of kitty litter in the back of the closet, like she hid it from me. When she got back 3 hours later, without kitty litter, I asked her if she was having doubts about us. She immediately said no and added that I didn't need to be so concerned. When she stepped out, this was bad and weird. I asked her if her friend was cheating on her husband. This caught her off guard, but she admitted her friend was. I said that was too bad, that she should tell her friend's husband so he could file for divorce. She just looked at me like I was crazy and said she wouldn't rat on her friend, even if she was cheating on him. I told her that while it's true that cheating ruins lives, he deserves to know the truth of his wife's betrayal, because no one would want to stay married to a cheater. She couldn't look me in the eye, and it was clear she didn't want to talk about it anymore. Suddenly, there was just 1 month left before the wedding. My fiancée came home late, claiming she was at a birthday party for Heather. After she passed out in bed, I got a message from Heather herself. She told me that she didn't feel right coming to me, but she didn't feel right keeping secrets either. My fiancé had told her to lie to me if I asked about her birthday party. On top of that, she was with her when she was supposed to order our wedding cake. She met a man there who started flirting with her. He asked if she was sure she wanted to get married because he could win her heart if she let him. She was taken aback, but gave him her number and basically invited him to try. Heather asked me if she'd been acting weird, or if I suspected she was seeing someone else. I told her yes and thanked her for telling me. While she slept, I checked her phone. I found messages between her and AP even before she got home that night. He asked if he was winning her heart, and she replied yes. That night, as my fiancée slept, I installed spyware on her phone so I could see what they said to each other when she woke up. I told her I was going to stay at my best man's house, Josh, until the ceremony in 1 month. For superstitious reasons, she didn't argue with me at all and actually seemed pleased that she would have the house to herself. While we lived separately, she increased the intimacy and romantic messages she sent to AP, even telling him he was a better lover than me as I was already coping with the end of our relationship. I knew I wasn't marrying this woman, and she was surely going to call off the wedding at any minute. Well, she didn't. She tells AP through the phone that she has to marry me because her family has already accepted and approved of me. However, since I hadn't discovered their affair yet, they would keep seeing each other until she could frame me for cheating on her so she could get the house and alimony payments. I could not believe the sheer evilness of her plan. She wanted to completely ruin my life. Even though I didn't do anything to deserve this, I told my best man, Josh, everything. He helped me to plan revenge against her. I had images of their messages, so we planned the most embarrassing moment of her life. The day of the wedding came, and we got ready as if it was the real deal, except we had a few surprises in store. The chapel had a speaker system installed, so we wired ourselves with small microphones. I stood at the altar, presenting every moment I spent with this entitled bimbo. As my would-be wife walked down the aisle, surrounded by her emotional and supportive family, they snapped pictures and filmed. Suddenly, Josh stepped forward and said, "Wait a minute." His voice was loud and clear, and instantaneously made everyone uncomfortable. The bride stopped walking. Josh looked at my face, even grabbed it sarcastically and said, "I think we have the wrong lover." Everyone gasped as he rushed over to the curtain behind us, pulling it aside to reveal AP dressed in a suit, holding a sign that read "Marry me instead." The bride fainted. Everyone really started freaking out. They didn't know what to think, but I could tell they wanted to be mad at someone. When she came to with a damp cloth on her head, her family demanded answers. She didn't even know that Josh and I contacted AP asking him to marry her. Instead, we were able to convince him that it was what she truly wanted and that their wedding would be a happy, wonderful day. He got down on one knee with his sign, and my fiancée only started sobbing. Her family was still demanding answers as she stared at me with tears streaming down her face. Her father finally had enough and grabbed AP by the arm, dragging him outside. She dropped her knees in front of me at the altar, begging me to forgive her because she truly wanted to marry me, which is why she didn't call off the wedding. I didn't say a word. Josh started reading the messages between her and AP, pronouncing the naughtiest words loud and clear. It became super awkward in the room, and her family started to believe she was cheating on me. Before everyone started filing out, her mother wailed over how much money they spent on the wedding. She asked her how she had the audacity to ruin her life and future by sleeping with another man when she was engaged to be married. Everyone, including Josh and I, left my would-be wife alone in the chapel. Since that day, her only goal has been to get back her family's trust and support. But after that nightmare, I doubt things will ever be easy for her again. After having an altercation outside, AP realized pretty quickly that he messed up, too. Today's second story. In this story, an architect falls for a realtor showing him his dream home. When his wife stays at her aunt's, suspicions arise. Discovering she spent nights with a neighbor, he confronts her, leading to a heated breakup. She pleads ignorance, but he refuses forgiveness. Soon, he gains support, while she faces public backlash and job loss for her betrayal. Now let's get into the story. Get my realtor wife when she gave me the tour of my future home. It's a beautiful, unique mansion. I'm an architect, but the design of my house still amazes me as much as it did the first time I saw it. It's older, but you wouldn't be able to tell by looking at it. It's futuristic and stands out on a giant hill all by itself. At the time, my future wife looked just as dazzling as the house. I asked her out that very night and took her to the nicest place in the city. On the way, we saw a billboard with her face on it. She was the star realtor of Memphis Area Realty, and she made it her personal goal to live with me in the house on the hill. As an architect, I got to travel all over the US to share my ideas and designs with upper-class business-driven people. I was never gone for more than 3 days. A lot of my work could be done remotely, but traveling was inevitable sometimes. So our story really begins when my wife volunteered to watch her aunt's house for 7 days. I had to leave for a trip before this, so we were apart for 10 days. It was the longest we ever went without seeing each other. Before she got to her aunt's house, she texted me often and called each evening to talk and say goodnight. On the first day she spent there, she was pretty quiet. She finally sent me a selfie with a campfire in the background and another man. There was also a teenager I didn't recognize. I asked who they were, and she texted me to explain that they lived on the same property as her aunt, just about 300 yards away in a different house. They knew her aunt, but not enough for her aunt to have them watch her house. My wife told me the man in the picture had a wife, but she went to bed early. I believed her and just asked her to be careful. I told her I didn't want anyone in her aunt's house with her for safety's sake. She agreed with me. The next 2 days she spoke to me less, even though she knew I was back home by myself. She said it was because she was busy taking care of her aunt's chickens. The next 3 days she only called me for about an hour on each day. The rest of the time, she said she had a few properties to show that were close to her aunt's house. She showed me some of her aunt's chickens, but video calling just made me wish I was there with her. Her aunt lived 2.5 hours from us, and I had to meet with a few clients in the opposite direction. On the 8th day, she only texted me goodnight and told me she got sucked into a book all day as an excuse for not speaking to me. On the 9th night, she sent me a selfie of her in bed. I honestly wondered if the man next door was lying beside her just out of sight. On the 10th night, she video called me around 9. She looked sad and sounded unsure of everything. It was extremely different compared to how my wife normally acted. Her excuse was that she fell off the porch steps and landed face first in the dirt. I was about to sympathize with her, but she quickly and loudly said she'd be home tomorrow and hung up. I tried calling her back over and over, but she didn't answer. I was so mad that I didn't try to call her the next day, even though I was worried and wanted to know if she was near home. When she walked in, I was relieved and swooped in for a hug. She was stiff and hesitant to let me caress her. I immediately asked her what was going on and what happened, but she played dumb and said there was nothing to report. I asked if she was as relieved to see me as I was to see her, and she only weakly said yes. We had intimacy, but it was just wrong. Before I could quiz her more, her aunt called my phone. It was odd that she wouldn't contact my wife directly. So I said it was someone from work and left the room to answer it. She said she came home to find AP with my wife in her home. She didn't know AP well at all, even though he was her neighbor, so it was very unusual to find him there without her permission. They looked swooped when she walked in, so she decided to review her driveway camera footage. I held my breath as she told me that AP went to her house several times to see my wife. She couldn't see what they did in her house, but whenever they went outside, the audio was recorded. My wife trash-talked me to AP and said he was better company. I asked her if AP was married and she said no, so my wife lied from day 2. Her aunt told me that on the last 2 nights she stayed there, AP came over around 10 p.m. and didn't leave the house until the next morning. I felt like my world was ending. I remembered the pictures she sent me and knew for certain that AP was in the house at that time. She apologized and said she never thought my wife was capable of cheating or lying like this. My wife came into the room and asked me what was going on. I lost it. I started screaming what her aunt just told me, and she started sweating. She said whatever AP told her wasn't true, but I told her that cameras don't lie. She opened her mouth to say something, but nothing came out, and I demanded to know why. I was so mad. I was shaking. She was holding her phone for some reason, so I grabbed it and snapped it in half. She screamed at me for that and called me a spaz, which made me lose it even more. I reminded her that I was freaking out because I just found out she spent nights with another man behind my back. I asked if they had intimate, and she just told me I wouldn't want to know. I told her to get out of my house. It was then that her eyes bugged out of her head. It was like she didn't realize I was going to break up with her for this. She suddenly pleaded with me, saying she didn't mean anything by it and just wanted someone to hang out with while she was there. I was only more infuriated and told her she could have invited me over. If she was that lonely, she didn't have to cheat on me. I could have driven the distance if it meant saving our marriage. She stammered and couldn't think of anything that would help excuse her from this poor decision and life-changing mistake. I told her once again to get out of my house. I wouldn't forgive this level of blatant betrayal. Without her phone, she walked to a gas station in tears to call her mom. She came to pick her up and get her stuff, but my soon-to-be ex refused to tell her what was going on. So I told her all about my wife's mistake. She begged me not to tell her mother, but I told her I was going to tell anyone and everyone what she did to me. Once she was at her mom's, I connected with my closest friends for support. In a short while, I became known as the city's newest and most desirable bachelor. She became known as the realtor who cheated on her respectable husband. Her billboard was graffitied, and she was subsequently fired from Memphis area realty.